Welcome to AI for You. Today's use case is about identifying which metrics can actually give you real insight into your existing initiatives and goals. Most of us in higher ed are drowning in data, page views, impressions, clicks, conversions, dashboards stacked on dashboards. But very few of those numbers actually inform the strategic decisions we're trying to make. We end up reporting on what's easy to count rather than what's tied to our real goals. The prompt in today's show notes walks an AI tool through an existing initiative or campaign that you're running, the strategic outcome you're trying to actually drive, the data sources you have access to, and the audiences you're trying to reach. From there, it helps you separate the vanity metrics from the ones that will give you real insight into whether what you're doing is working, and flags the gaps where you may need to start collecting data that you don't have today. I have the pleasure today of talking with Jamie Boggs. Jamie is the Marketing and Engagement Analyst at Eastern Kentucky University, and he's one of the most thoughtful voices working at the intersection of data and AI in higher ed today. He co-hosts the EduData podcast, where they dig into how institutions can actually use their data to make better decisions. Let's jump right into the conversation. So, Jamie, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Brian, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for asking. Happy to be here.
So you've had kind of a varied career, right? You've sat kind of at the intersection of math and counseling and marketing and analytics. What pulled you into, starting to use AI and data practically in higher ed instead of just treating analytics like, a back office function?
Yeah, honest to goodness, it started in undergrad. I was getting a math degree and I was an RA, so I knew I was going into higher ed. I did my senior research project on college admissions and optimizing. Let's say you had 5 students in 5 schools and you rank their preferences, then you optimize that scenario to make everybody the most happy and successful. So it really started back then of just looking for logical applications. I like things to make sense. Throughout my career, I've kind of been the data guy wherever I was when I was in counseling and advising, and then eventually made my way over to data full time. So that's been a lot of fun. And I was very lucky and blessed to be at Element 451 when AI just boomed, because we went all in and in a lot of ways leaders in that area. So it was great to be a part of that. And I was just very thankful to be there when that happened.
And then when did you start using AI for data analysis? Did that start right away, or did you start using it for other things first and then kind of clicked that was a great use case for it?
Yeah, just like everything else, it's been kind of like evolution. I would just go there at first for some ideas or for clarifying a formula or a model and say, hey, what if I did this versus that? Are there any other options for these things? And then as AI continued to evolve, which is, every day at this point, eventually got to the point where I would say, hey, let's do this together. You and I, agent, are going to figure this out. We're going to answer these questions with this data. How are we going to do it? So it was a pretty quick evolution I really had no choice at Element. We really wanted to be very AI forward, not only in our product, but in our internal practice. And as fast as things move in the private sector like Element, you almost have to do that to keep up, just to get everything done.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when ChatGPT announced their advanced data analysis mode, I was like, oh my gosh, here we go.
Yes.
And then I went right out and took 5 different data sources and had it help me aggregate those all into one big master source. And then I went and told my boss, I just did 3 months of work in 2 days.
Whenever I say something like that, people think I'm exaggerating. I'll say, yeah, this saved me 40 hours this month. They're like, oh, that's cute. I'm like, no, really, this would have taken me forever to do manually.
Yeah. And in higher ed, we don't have the luxury of having that time and those, resources. We just wouldn't do it, So.
Right. Yeah.
So I've heard you say lots of time that institutions are data rich, but insight poor. So why is that so critical right now for higher ed teams trying to improve enrollment and trust and student outcomes.
Yeah, you kind of referenced it earlier, just that the resources are at a minimum at institutions. So I think the data is almost paralyzing. There's so much of it. I can go in now and get millions of rows from Banner of things that don't really even tell me anything. Like we have 10 different systems I can pull things out of. There's so much there, but so few resources to actually dig into it. And I think it's tough to make those strategic decisions when you don't have anybody set aside to focus on finding these answers, because that's what we want, right? We want the answers. We want to say this works, this doesn't work, this is going in that direction. And especially right now, as we are at the enrollment cliff, right? We're there. So things are certainly not getting any easier. So I think it's now or never as far as using data for the reason you gathered it in the first place.
These different data systems are now starting to see the value of integrating AI. I love the fact that, Google Analytics now has a AI companion in there where you can just ask it instead of having to sort through all the different options and go find the report you need. You can just ask it, how many people are coming in from different channels, and it'll just give you that information. And I think we're really moving towards this environment where we just ask our data questions and it gives us those insights.
No, completely agree. And those insights are what we need. I think at some point we're heading toward maybe the death of the dashboard, maybe not completely, but the way that we know it, because I can give you a pie chart for your campaigns that give you the most ROI and where all your leads are coming from. But if I can really tell you, or have my data tell you, this is exactly how we should shift our funds and shift our focus, then that's the answer we're looking for, not the pie chart.
So a lot of people hear like the term AI and they think automation first, right? Where you just, take a process and you make it faster and you make, AI do that specific process. But you talk a lot of times much more about like this systems kind of thinking. So what do you think people get wrong about using AI well in higher ed?
Yeah, automation does have its place. I use it for various purposes. For podcasting, I'll have it pull my RSS feed, clean the description and the image, and put it on social media. I set that up maybe a year ago for my personal podcasts, and I haven't looked at it. It still works, but I don't ever go over there. But that's part of the problem, right? When you're doing something just to skip a step or to speed it up, you kind of set it and forget it. You live there and it doesn't evolve. And as fast as things are changing with our messaging, things are changing with the abilities of the tools, we're really missing out on opportunities when we're just using it for those background activities. I think when you start to bring it in systematically, it does so much more for your institution. For one, you're sharing the information and you're not duplicating efforts. If I produce an agent that is excellent at maximizing SEO for our website, why do four other people need to create their own? And that's what's going to happen if we're not in a process focused system of using AI. We're going to duplicate our efforts. And it being a part of process also does a lot for the improvement of the agent. If it's a regular part of our workflow, we treat it like a staff member, and we say, all right, well, we're going through this part of the process again. Let's see how the agent did with this activity. Oh, it was good, but it can do this now. So next time, let's try this. Or it may be that we get it out and we say, oh, well, maybe we need to make different decisions about how we work this agent-based staff member into the process. So I think it's good for improving our own processes. We can save more time. We can be more efficient. We can produce higher quality stuff. And for us to QA the AI stuff. Like, I trust AI. It does a lot of stuff, but you need to double check everything. And you're not going to do that if it's just an automation in the background. So I think it can really optimize our time. And maybe even more than that, it can help us to make the entire workflow of our work be more self-reflective on the AI side and on the human side.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction. I tell people all the time that, I mean, automation is great. It definitely has its place, but automation is like a 10%, maybe 20% increase. Whereas innovation, now you're looking at like a 10x or a 20x times. Because, instead of getting so bogged down in like, here's where we're starting, here's where we're ending, and here's all those steps that we do in the middle, how do we make each of those steps be more efficient? Instead, you're just like, here's where we're starting, here's where we're going. How do we get there more efficiently and more, effectively, really?
And it's not just a one-time thing. It's got to be an ongoing thing. It's got to be an ongoing conversation with us to say, well, how's it this week? How can we tweak it? We're doing that with our human processes. Why not our AI processes? It really comes down to intentionality. You've got to be intentional with the way that you incorporate it. If you just grab a tool and go use it, whether it's AI or anything else, you're not going to get the most out of it. You have to do it on purpose.
Yeah, and especially where in AI, where these models and these tools are changing so fast. I mean, there's new features that come out one week that, take everything that you've done the last week and automate that entire process.
Right. Yeah. It's always fun to, even now with putting in the work to train an agent or to get it the information it needs or to automate getting the information there so you don't have to do anything manually. And then the next week it's a button click. It's like, if I would have just waited.
Right.
But we can't wait forever. We got to do stuff, right?
That's right. And, I tell people all the time, like, these custom GPTs that you're building, all that's going away. And they're like, I put all these work into it. But I'm like, that work still matters. Like, you still need to know the structure and the instructions and all those details that you can give to your agent. And now it can go do those tasks much more, effectively because you've already documented what you needed to do. So.
Yeah, and just in the same way that we tell college students that you learn better if you're learning something, we make them do presentations because if you're teaching, you have to have a deeper meaning or a deeper understanding. It's the same way for training an agent. If I'm teaching an agent what we're looking for in our marketing strategy, I get a better depth of understanding and maybe even a new perspective on our strategy as I'm feeding it into the system in a way that it needs to understand it.
Yeah, that's super important. So you say on your, on the Edge Data podcast, you dive into different ways that you can use data insights, right, to inform different parts of an institutional strategy and the tactics that you work on. So what are some of the different ways that AI is changing the analytics landscape as a whole?
Yeah, I think there are a ton right now, and I think there are even more we're going to find out later. One we kind of already hit on is the time-saving piece. It could take me 20 hours to clean and build a real data set when with an agent, I can just hand it and say, hey, change all the dates in this notebook. And that's a 2-hour task. I solved in 3 seconds. Or to update some kind of formula or model. Another piece, like you said, is the actual machine learning and analytical models. I used to go to ChatGPT and say, help me build this random forest regression model or whatever model I'm working with, help me build this. And then I would go put it in a Python script or put it in Snowflake or whatever I was using and do it. Now I can say, hey, we're going to do this analysis. This is how I want to start. Here's the data. Let's go. And then it can actually do it, again, so much faster than any system that I could work with would do that. And I think that's the case across whether we're looking at aggregating data for grades to improve retention and performance of our students, whether that's to look at recruiting and strategy. I think there are a lot of things we haven't tapped into yet for the retention piece. Let's say a student's having a difficult time academically. We know they have 2 jobs. They don't have a vehicle. We can feed that into a trained agent that comes back with a tutoring schedule, public transportation, like the segment of one we talk about in marketing, the segment of one for everything is arriving in a lot of ways. So I think being able to go ahead and jump on those things. And again, the problem is resources. We know it can do this. We just don't have the time to do it. The other piece, I think, is the interpretation of data analysis. I think that's starting to emerge a little more. For years, we have been desiring, let me get this number. Let me see the conversion rate. Let me see the enrollment number, and then we're going to run with that. I think we need to start better utilizing AI to interpret that, not only say, yes, my enrollment numbers are good for this year, but in doing that, you kind of broke your funnel and next year is going to be hard. Like the interpretation at the different layers of data are not something we're getting now because we're really just looking for that one outcome or that one question we're being asked. So the interpretation, I think, is the next piece of how we're going to utilize AI for data analysis. And like I said, I think we will have visualizations, but I think it will be in a form of answer this question for me, and it'll give you 4 bar graphs and a narrative, and you go from there.
I agree entirely. And I think, it's going to be fascinating when, the AI is helping inform us on what metrics we should actually be reporting on, because so often we get stuck in, reporting on vanity metrics that may not actually have any relevance to our strategic goals that we're really trying to reach. Mm-hmm. But, leadership has gotten used to seeing those page views, and it seems to have, value to them until we start saying, oh, the page views are going down because we're not getting as much traffic because of AI, but our conversions, our enrollment is still solid because we're getting more qualified traffic, right, and we're just missing out those informational and navigational searches. But, if you don't have someone whose full-time job it is to be looking at your analytics and reporting on that, you're just going to see the numbers going down. You're not going to know why. And people are going to panic.
And it's so much more accessible now. Sure, it's great to have, and there's still a need for full-time analysts and to be able to create the models and to help interpret it and to be able to utilize AI. Their jobs are going to be easier in efficiency and things like that now. But even if you don't have that dedicated person with the right resources and training, you can get more done than you were before, for sure.
So where do you see like data analysis in AI going? Like, what do you see like 2 years down the road? How do you think our data is going to be informing our decisions?
Yeah, like I said, I think the death of dashboards is on the horizon. I saw your reaction when I said that earlier. I was really nervous to say that out loud because that's what we all love so much, but we don't. Every system that I use, there's a visualization tool, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. But then I noticed that when I go to it, I go to look for one piece of information or one chart or one tool. So I think that's going to be almost taking that segment of one and focusing back on us to say, this is what I want, and AI can curate a report, grab the data that I want, put it in a way that I need it. Now, there will be some training and that kind of thing, but I can't wait till we get to the place, and it's not that far away, to where AI starts answering the questions before we ask them. We're going to have a data set and say, this is what we're doing for our marketing strategy. This is what we've done in the past. What do you think about the strategy moving forward? And then we're going to get some answers. And then before we can even start asking questions about separate populations, like, oh yeah, while I've got this, here are all these other answers. So that's going to be scary in some ways, that they make a lot of movies about robots answering things before you ask them. But I think we're getting pretty close to that. And I think it is going to be very much curated to the individual and much less standard general visualization. And I think it's going to be a lot more of individuals not being able to focus on the data that's important to them, but the actual data, not those numbers you were talking about earlier, because everybody wants to know impressions, clicks, conversions, but I really want those enrollments. I really want to know which of those students actually go to the websites and do something, and do something valuable. A click is great to know, but do they go on to click on 3 other things? I think a lot of those actual behavior-based things are going to become more apparent to us.
Yeah, and I love that. We talk about personalization all the time when it comes to like student communications and things like that, but being able to do personalization within our data and our reporting structure as well, so that when you send out, instead of sending out a 20-page report of your latest digital content performance, every person who gets that report just gets the data that is most relevant to the decisions they're trying to make, along with insights into here are actions you might want to think about taking because this is what the data is showing us. So
yeah, and everybody wants different things, or at least they're being asked for different things, even if they may know this is what I'm working on, and this is what we have found to be important. They still have to report up, and they know that leadership wants the shiny thing. So how can we keep those, but also make everything else shine in ways that make sense? And I hope that the reporting goes in that direction. I'm already trying to prepare with the tools we're using at Eastern Kentucky University to be, I don't know, dashboard proof to where, yes, we will have the things, but it's also going to have the access available to where people can get the actual answers to the questions. And it's easier said than done, but the tools are out there. It's about getting buy-in. It's about getting the resources, which none of us have, but we're all doing our best with what we do have, I guess.
So we also know that higher ed tends to be siloed, right? We all have our different categories. We're all staying in our lanes, right? What are some of the issues that those silos create when it comes to data and AI?
Way too many. A general problem is that Timothy and I talk about a lot on EduData is just the availability of the data. If I work in marketing, which every institution's different, but I may not have a great relationship with admissions. And that's such like, we should just be together all the time, right? Like we should be sharing everything, but that's not always the case. And then even if it goes forward, as it goes forward into retention and even the orientation process of getting together the housing applications and those kind of things, like everything is so separate. And the problem with AI, when you start to get into it, is that a lot of departments or even individuals are using their own platform. Institutions aren't doing a great job yet of saying, we are a ChatGPT campus, we're a Claude campus, or even our department is this, and we're going to use it in a broad way to do the collaboration pieces of it. We can share company knowledge, we can share institutional knowledge so that we're not all having to retrain it on everything, and we can collaborate on projects. So I think the silos keep us from doing that at the school as a whole, but also a lot of times just in between departments. We're not doing a great job of communicating in that. And I think we're not doing a great job of sharing expertise. I think we have some people on campus who are way ahead and great at this, but they're not always around for the people who are just learning it because we're not communicating. I don't know what this other department across campus is doing with AI. They may be doing the best stuff ever, and a 10-minute conversation can make my life so much easier, but we never know it because there is no common hub, there is no communication. So I think the silos in higher ed are going to make things more difficult because of AI. I think it's going to drive the silos further apart unless we get very proactive and be intentional about the way we attack it. Because I think people will say, no, this is my agent, this is my baby, this is my GPT, this is my co-pilot, whatever you want to use, but this one's mine. I'm not going to share it. That concerns me. I haven't seen it yet, but it's a big concern for AI on campuses, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I run into that so much. And one of the first things I do when I start working with a campus is start looking for opportunities to create just like these AI hangouts where anybody can come and everybody just shares, and creating that culture of learning and that culture of sharing at an institution. I mean, that is a big cultural shift. That's, change management at its core. But AI is not going to fix our data governance issues. It's not going to fix our content governance issues. It's only going to expose them and make them even more apparent. I think AI is best learned in groups and best learned in diverse groups from all over, a campus or an institution, because everybody uses it differently, and you can learn from everybody. Even if they're just getting started, they might do something in a prompt. You're like, oh, now that's a different way that I hadn't thought of doing that before. So
And
So many
I mean, I
opportunities.
primarily use it for the data piece, and I could learn a lot from somebody who's using it for content production. I think that would be very helpful for me to be able to work with those individuals to see, oh, well, this is why we're producing what we're producing that I'm going to measure later. Yeah, I agree with you. It's just the more we can share, the better. And I think this is an issue as quickly as it's evolving. This isn't the internet, which evolved really quickly, but this is exponentially faster. If you get behind, the learning curve continues to grow in a lot of ways.
So what do you think some things are that institutions can start doing now so that they're not scrambling in, a year or 2 years trying to catch up?
Money. No. I mean, that is part of it, though. I think there are two things that need to happen if a campus really wants to dive headfirst in this. And one is investing in staffing. I don't know that you have to have like an AI department alongside your IT or your web team or wherever that lives. But I think there need to be people on campus that are responsible for that intentionality to say, this is going to be our suite of products we're going to use. We are going to have a hub for sharing prompts. This is the type of data we're going to train with. I think there needs to be somebody in charge to be intentional about this. Maybe that's a group of people that already work there, but time is the resource that we run into problems with anyway. So I think staffing to create the system, to create the structures, and to be intentional. And the other piece is just to allow the time for training. Time, yeah. I mean, that's the big difficulty, right? But if we can get everybody at least a base level of training to understand this is why this is important. These are ways you can take advantage of this today. Because I mean, there's such low hanging fruit for every department on campus that's not using AI already. So these are ways you can take advantage of this today. And this is how we can work together moving forward to get on the same page about this, to continue to utilize this, to make it easier for us, to make it easier for our students, our faculty, our president. We all win when we get together on the same page with this. So yeah, I think centralization of a coordinator, some type of coordination of AI, and then just pushing training. We all wish we had time to do more of it, but I think any kind of push from the executive council, the president, that would go a lot further than just some advocates on campus saying, you guys got to see this. Let's go do this. They don't have time for me, but they'll have time for the president, I think.
Absolutely. And that is like such a indicator in institutions. Like when you go to an institution and they actually have headcount and time allocated for AI exploration and AI integration, it makes all the difference versus institutions that are just talking about it, but aren't actually committing to it by putting any resources behind it.
And you go to a lot more schools than I do. Yeah. What's your perception of how often this is happening?
I'd say maybe 10% of the time.
Yeah.
Where I'll go into an institution and they'll already have like an AI council formed, or they'll already that's outside of just IT trying to make sure that everything's locked down and secure,
right?
Where it's actually being used by other parts of the organization to try to figure out how to integrate it into workflows. So
yeah,
it's definitely not the norm.
Yeah, and that's why I love what you do with going around speaking and visiting campuses. And it's one thing to hear it from people on your campus to say, let's do this more. But I think it's different to have test cases and just examples of productive use and what that can look like for a campus. I think we need more and more of that for the advocacy piece to get buy-in from everybody. I think at first a lot of people were afraid of it. I don't think it's the fear as much anymore of it's AI and it's scary. I think it's the fear of the time commitment, and we're going to have to change our processes, even though eventually I may see that things will be a lot easier. It's just like my diet, right? I can see if I live hard for 6 months, I'm going to look and feel better. But man, that candy's sitting there. I need to just take care of it right now, right? So I think it's kind of the fear of commitment maybe to the long-term change, but I get it, and it's an issue that everybody's coming around to at different schedules on their own time.
I just look at it and I'm like, there's such a sense of urgency that I feel about it. It frustrates me to go into different organizations who are like, yeah, it's on our radar. Maybe we'll come up with like a 2 or 3 year AI plan. I'm like, 2 or 3 years? You don't have 2 or 3 years.
You don't. And if you try it, then it's not going to be, this conversation won't matter anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I always finish it with is, what's one use case, either personal or professional, that saves you the most time or has the biggest impact for you every month?
I hate the term for it, but vibe coding has changed my life. Whatever notebooking tool I'm working in, to be able to say, instead of me going through and changing 5 pieces of a formula, 5 weights, variables, to be able to say, let's run this 4 times. You do this. I'm going to go and gather some more data while you're like, it's a team approach. And it's an expert as a teammate. I can find colleagues everywhere to talk to, but somebody who has access to pretty much the entire internet on the forefront of their availability to be able to talk to through a process of developing an analysis, developing formulas, troubleshooting syntax. I mean, that's the thing that I used to have hair before I started doing manual coding, but being able to do it with an agent, like I said earlier, the number of hours sounds crazy of how much but it's easily 40 plus a month that I save just by having that resource. And it's only getting faster and better and more available. Like, that's becoming an essential part of almost every technology tool now, is to have that there. It used to be I would have ChatGPT open while I was using this technology. Well, now that technology has it, that software has it. And then just a lot of QA stuff, whether that's podcast scripting, whether that's reports I'm going to send out, double checking math that I did on my own, or having one agent double check another agent's math. I like that. I wish I could get them together to argue with each other, but it's entertaining for me to see that. But yeah, I wish it had a better name, but I just don't like the term vibe coding, but that's what it is. And it's a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, the ability to be able to spin up an app just to test for internal usage purposes is just unbelievable. The savings and we talk about silos. Like, if you create something that's useful to everybody across your campus and you share it, that's an immediate, easy win for everybody to say, oh, wow, this really can help improve my job and the work that I do.
And I look so much smarter than I actually am all the time. And it's been very helpful for my career to be able to utilize these tools. You're not just getting Jamie, you're getting Jamie plus. And that's been very helpful. So I think people that aren't taking advantage of that are really missing out. Don't let the silly names of these new products coming out deter you from diving in.
For sure. Can't thank you enough for coming on the show. If people want to stay in touch or follow you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn probably. That's where I do most of these data conversations. I'm pretty boring most other places. But check out all the Enrollify podcasts. The EduData podcast has been a blast. Timothy's awesome. I hope he gets back on that at some point. I'd love to connect over on LinkedIn, Jamie Boggs, and we'll talk as much AI as you want to.
Awesome. Excellent. Thanks so much, Jamie.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Brian.
it. What a fantastic discussion. I could talk data all day. Jamie said something early on that stuck with me, and the more we talked, the more it played out across the whole episode, and that's the death of the dashboard. So much time is spent building dashboards that someone looks at once and never opens again. And Jamie's prediction that we're moving toward a world where you just ask your data a question and get a curated answer back is exactly where this is headed. His framing of the segment of one is the perfect companion to that idea. We talk about personalization constantly when it comes to student communications, but Jamie is pushing that into reporting and analytics, where every person on the team can get only the data that's relevant to the decisions they're trying to make, paired with insights and recommended actions instead of some generic 20-page report that nobody reads. That shift from standard visualizations to individually curated answers is going to change how leadership consumes data and how teams operate. I also loved his point that we're not just looking for the number anymore. We need AI to help us interpret what that number means at every layer. Hitting your enrollment goal this year while quietly breaking your funnel for next year is the kind of thing only interpretation catches, not a dashboard. And his reminder near the end that you're not just getting Jamie, you're getting Jamie Plus is exactly the mindset every higher ed professional should be bringing to this work right now. Please reach out to me with unique ways that you're integrating AI into your professional and personal lives. And as always, blue skies and keep creating.